What if I told you that the financial advice you've been following your entire life could actually be destroying your wealth after you turn 50? Imagine this. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man and one of history's greatest investors, once admitted he could have been twice as rich if not for a single mistake he made decades earlier. Has this ever happened to you, looking back and realizing a decision that seemed minor at the time ended up having enormous consequences on your financial future? That's because compounding doesn't just work on your smart moves. It magnifies your errors too, creating ripple effects that can last decades and become increasingly difficult to recover from as you age. Have you ever wondered why some investors end up with vastly different results despite starting from similar positions? What if I told you that a single decision made in your 50s could either secure your retirement or devastate it beyond recovery? The conventional financial wisdom pushes us relentlessly to chase returns, find the next Tesla, or discover the next Bitcoin. We're bombarded with messages about saving more, investing more aggressively, and taking bigger risks to catch up. But Munger reveals a counterintuitive truth that could transform how you think about money after 50. Success isn't about finding that needle in a haystack investment anymore. It's about something far more fundamental and accessible, avoiding catastrophic mistakes. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you think about wealth building in the second half of life. The financial media rarely discusses this profound shift that should occur in your investment strategy as you age. When you're younger, taking calculated risks makes perfect sense. Those are your offensive years. But after 50, Munger insists that you should dramatically shift your focus from playing offense to playing defense. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The clock, that faithful friend who once gave you the gift of long-term compounding, begins working against you. Each year becomes more precious, and the runway for recovery shrinks dramatically. I've seen this play out countless times in real people's lives. There's a particular tragedy in watching someone in their late 50s or early 60s, feeling the pressure of inadequate savings, make one desperate lunge for financial security through aggressive investments. Now, I want to go even deeper into this critical insight from one of history's greatest investment minds. The true danger for investors past 50 isn't underperformance. It's something far more devastating that few financial advisors will tell you about. If you found value in Munger's wisdom today, hit that subscribe button and join our community of long-term thinkers. We're building a space where financial common sense cuts through the market noise. The true danger for investors past 50 isn't underperformance, it's catastrophic loss. This distinction represents a fundamental transformation in perspective that can protect your financial future. Think about the math for a moment. If you're 60 years old with $500,000 saved and you lose half in a market crash or failed investment, you're not just down to $250,000. You're down to $250,000 with potentially only 5 to 10 working years left to make up the difference. That same 50% loss for a 30-year-old is an entirely different scenario. They might have 30-plus years of earnings, savings, and compounding ahead of them. The impact is dramatically different, not because the percentage is different, but because the recovery timeline is fundamentally altered. This isn't about pessimism. It's about clear-eyed realism. Munger's wisdom reveals a hidden truth that runs counter to what most financial advisors tell you. Durability becomes more valuable than spectacular returns as we age. The investor who makes a steady 7 to 9% year after year will ultimately outperform the one who alternates between 30% gains and 25% losses. consistency and capital preservation become the cornerstones of a successful late-stage investment strategy. Many of us have been conditioned by financial media to fear missing out on the next big thing. But Munger's approach flips this mindset on its head. After 50, you should instead fear being wiped out. This psychological shift from FOMO to what I call FOBO, fear of blowing out, creates a decision framework that naturally steers you toward more prudent choices. The journey to financial security after 50 isn't about chasing unicorns. It's about building an ark that can weather inevitable storms. It's about recognizing that outlasting your mistakes often proves more valuable than maximizing your returns at all costs. This shift toward defense brings us to what might be Munger's most counterintuitive revelation. After 50, boring is beautiful. Our culture glorifies the exciting, the novel, the disruptive. But when it comes to preserving and growing wealth in the later stages of life, these qualities often lead to disaster. The financial landscape is littered with the ruins of portfolios that chased excitement rather than stability. Munger's wisdom cuts through the noise with crystal clarity. Avoid leverage, debt, speculation, and complexity. These elements might juice returns temporarily, but they dramatically increase your vulnerability to market shocks. Think about the fundamental architecture of financial disasters. Almost all of them involve some combination of borrowed money, speculative positions, and instruments so complex that even their creators barely understand them. The paradox that emerges from Munger's philosophy is both beautiful and profound. The less thrilling your investment approach after 50, the more thrilling your retirement is likely to be. There's a certain poetry in the idea that financial excitement in your 60s, 70s, and beyond comes not from watching volatile investments swing wildly, but from having the freedom and security that comes with steady, reliable returns. I've witnessed this mindset transformation in countless investors, that moment when they realize that sleeping well at night is actually worth more than the possibility of spectacular gains. This psychological breakthrough often leads to better decision-making and, ironically, better long-term performance. Now, I want to address perhaps the most destructive force in investment psychology, something Munger identified that silently destroys more portfolios than almost any other factor. If you've experienced this shift toward defensive investing in your own financial thinking, write "defense mode activated" in the comments below. Munger calls envy the dumbest of the 7 deadly sins for a brilliant reason. It's the only one that provides absolutely no pleasure in return. Think about that for a moment. Greed at least gives you momentary satisfaction. Gluttony offers temporary pleasure. But envy, it only delivers misery. This revelation goes beyond finance into the realm of human psychology. Portfolios are rarely destroyed by an inability to earn. They're destroyed by the toxic comparison game that drives people to abandon sound strategies when they see others apparently getting rich quicker. This competitive impulse, hardwired into our brains through millennia of evolution, becomes particularly dangerous after 50, when recovery from mistakes becomes increasingly difficult. I've seen this pattern repeat with tragic regularity. The neighbor buys a luxury car. The brother-in-law brags about a crypto windfall, and suddenly, decades of disciplined investing seem inadequate. In these moments of weakness, sound financial foundations are abandoned for speculative gambles that often end in tears. The breakthrough comes when you realize that financial independence isn't a competition. Your neighbor's investment returns have precisely zero impact on your ability to achieve your goals. The only score that matters is whether your strategy provides the resources you need for the life you want to live. This mental freedom, releasing yourself from the tyranny of comparison, represents one of the most powerful transformations possible in your financial journey. This envy factor becomes even more perilous as we age. What's merely unwise in our 30s becomes potentially catastrophic after 50. The reason is simple but profound: time horizon. When you're younger, an envious mistake might set you back a few years. After 50, that same envious decision can erase decades of patient compounding, leaving insufficient time for recovery. The mindset transformation that Munger advocates is almost Zen-like in its simplicity. Successful investors past 50 cultivate a remarkable indifference to what others are doing. They develop an inner compass that remains steadfast amid the noise of market euphoria or panic. This psychological resilience represents one of the most powerful assets you can develop on your financial journey. Consider the contrast between two investors. The first constantly monitors competitors, obsesses over market trends, and repeatedly adjusts strategy based on what seems to be working. For others, the second focuses solely on staying solvent and compounding quietly year after year with minimal concern for appearing brilliant or keeping up with the Joneses. History consistently shows the second investor outperforming the first over meaningful time periods. This revelation about envy connects directly to another of Munger's most candid admissions: his regret about selling great businesses too soon. With characteristic bluntness, he acknowledges this as one of his biggest financial mistakes. When you discover a truly exceptional business, the winning strategy is often breathtakingly simple. Just hold it. Don't overthink it. Don't try to time the market. Don't worry about short-term fluctuations. Just hold. The psychology behind this wisdom reveals a fascinating paradox of human nature. We tend to do exactly the opposite of what serves our financial interests, selling winners too early to lock in gains while stubbornly clinging to losers, hoping they'll recover. This behavioral pattern is so consistent it might as well be hardwired into our DNA. If you've ever experienced the regret of selling a great investment too soon, type "diamond hands" in the comments to acknowledge this common investing pitfall that even legends like Munger struggled with. This pattern of holding great businesses brings us to another counterintuitive truth that Munger discovered through decades of market observation. The relationship between certainty and accuracy is often inverse. In other words, the louder someone proclaims their market predictions, the more likely they are to be catastrophically wrong. This revelation challenges the very foundation of how most people consume financial information. Think about the pundits and experts you see on financial networks or read in investment newsletters, the ones who speak with unwavering confidence about exactly where interest rates will be next year, precisely which sectors will outperform, or definitively which currencies will strengthen. Munger's observation cuts to the heart of this theatre. Throughout market history, those who sounded most certain were consistently the ones who lost the most money, both for themselves and their followers. The wisdom here transcends investing and touches on a fundamental truth about human knowledge. The world is simply too complex, too interconnected, and too unpredictable for any single mind to fully comprehend. The genuine masters of any domain, whether finance, science, or philosophy, are precisely those who have the deepest appreciation for the limits of their understanding. This insight leads to a profound awakening. Successful investing isn't about being a know-it-all, it's about the opposite. Recognizing what you don't understand and having the discipline to avoid those areas entirely. This intellectual honesty creates a boundary around your financial decisions, keeping you safely within your circle of competence. The transformation here is psychological rather than technical. It requires developing something remarkably rare in today's culture: the courage to say, "I don't know." These three simple words, so difficult for many successful people to utter, become a superpower when applied to investment decisions. by acknowledging the limits of your understanding, you naturally avoid betting on nonsense and stick to areas where you can make reasonable judgments. Berkshire Hathaway's investment approach exemplifies this principle perfectly. They understood insurance, so they bought insurance companies. They understood consumer brands like Coca-Cola and See's Candies, so they bought them. And critically, they simply ignored industries they didn't understand, regardless of how trendy or promising they appeared to others. This selective approach saved them from countless disasters over the decades. During the dot-com bubble, they avoided technology stocks not because they thought they were overvalued, though they were, but because Buffett and Munger didn't understand them well enough. They received mockery at the time for missing the opportunity of a lifetime, until the bubble burst and their patience was vindicated. The revelation here goes beyond simply avoiding losses. It's about the freedom that comes with abandoning the exhausting pretense of omniscience. The weight lifted when you no longer feel compelled to have an opinion on everything. From Bitcoin to biotech, from interest rates to international politics, creates mental space for deeper thinking in areas where you actually possess insight. For more insights that can protect and grow your wealth after 50, subscribe to our channel. We focus on timeless investment principles rather than get-rich-quick schemes. This intellectual honesty connects perfectly with another fundamental shift Munger advocates for investors over 50. The transformation from constantly chasing new information to building a framework of timeless principles that guide your decisions through all market conditions. The moment you realize that most financial news is designed to trigger emotional reactions rather than provide genuine insight, represents a breakthrough in your investing journey. Have you ever experienced the relief that comes from saying, "I don't know," instead of pretending to understand something complex? Type intellectual honesty in the comments if you felt this liberating shift in your own approach to investing or life decisions. Now, let's explore another profound mindset transformation that Munger advocates for investors after 50. One that completely reframes how you think about your relationship with money and work. This transformation from employee thinking to owner thinking may sound subtle, but it represents one of the most profound mindset revolutions you can undergo on your wealth-building journey. Most people, even highly educated, successful professionals, spend their entire lives trapped in employee thinking. They optimize for promotions, prestigious titles, corner offices, and perks. They measure success by salary increases and status symbols. There's nothing inherently wrong with career advancement, but Munger points out a brutal truth. Titles don't compound. Ownership does. This revelation illuminates the fundamental difference between the two approaches. Employees focus on looking important and climbing hierarchies. Owners focus on possessing things that generate cash while they sleep. An employee asks, "How do I please my boss?" An owner asks, "Does this make money long term?" Only one of these questions leads to durable wealth. I've witnessed this breakthrough moment for countless professionals, doctors, lawyers, executives, who suddenly realize they've been playing the wrong game. Despite decades of six-figure incomes, many find themselves with impressive job titles but minimal assets that work independently of their time and effort. They've been running on an increasingly sophisticated treadmill, but a treadmill nonetheless. The awakening often comes with a startling realization. Even high-income professionals are just a few missed paychecks away from financial pressure if they haven't developed ownership mindsets alongside their careers. This vulnerability becomes increasingly dangerous after 50 when recovery options narrow dramatically. The ownership revolution that Munger describes isn't about quitting your job tomorrow. It's about redirecting your energy and capital toward assets that outlast your active working years. It's about asking a deceptively simple question: do you own anything that works for you when you're not working? This inquiry cuts to the heart of financial independence. Real estate that generates rent whether you show up or not. Dividend-paying stocks that send you checks regardless of your health or energy levels. Business stakes that continue producing income even if you're golfing, traveling, or simply relaxing with family. These ownership positions create the freedom that mere employment, even lucrative employment, cannot provide. What makes this particularly urgent after 50 is the brutal arithmetic of time. In your 30s and 40s, you can reasonably expect decades of productive work ahead. The luxury of time allows you to recover from setbacks or slowly build ownership positions. After 50, the window narrows. You simply don't have enough remaining productive years to keep trading your diminishing energy for dollars. The transition to ownership becomes not just desirable but essential. The paradox here is that building ownership requires a fundamentally different psychology than building a career. Careers reward visibility, assertiveness, and constant activity. Ownership rewards patience, quietness, and letting time do the heavy lifting. It's a shift from the spotlight to the backstage. Less glamorous, perhaps, but ultimately more durable. This ownership mindset leads directly to one of Munger's most powerful insights, drawn from perhaps his most formative experience, living through the Great Depression. Born in 1924, Munger witnessed firsthand an economic catastrophe that most of us only read about in history books. This living memory imprinted a perspective that shaped his entire investment philosophy. Prosperity is not the default setting of economic life. The revelation here cuts against the grain of modern financial thinking. We tend to view recessions as temporary aberrations in an otherwise upward trajectory. Munger saw something different, a natural pendulum that swings between feast and famine throughout history. This historical awareness creates a profound transformation in risk assessment. Has this distinction between employee thinking and owner thinking created an aha moment for you? Type ownership mindset in the comments if you've been contemplating this crucial transformation in your own financial journey. When you truly internalize that economic conditions fluctuate, cyclically and sometimes severely, blind optimism becomes not just naive, but potentially fatal to your financial health. Now, I want to explore Munger's most distilled wisdom, what he described as the critical habits that protected his wealth more than any brilliant investment move. With characteristic bluntness, he reduced his success formula to 3 simple subtractions: avoiding debt, avoiding drama, and avoiding dumb people. The power in this framework lies in its emphasis on prevention rather than action. Debt acts as a magnifier of mistakes, transforming recoverable errors into financial catastrophes. Drama wastes precious mental energy that could otherwise be directed toward clear thinking and rational decision-making. And dumb people, by which Munger means those who are reckless, dishonest, unreliable, or addicted to shortcuts, create a form of social contagion that inevitably affects your own judgment. What's remarkable about this triad is how it contradicts conventional wisdom about wealth building. Most financial advice focuses on what to do, which stocks to buy, which strategies to employ, which opportunities to seize. Munger's approach inverts this completely, suggesting that what you don't do matters far more than what you do. This revelation creates a decision framework based on subtraction rather than addition, on removing negative influences rather than constantly seeking positive ones. The impact of this approach becomes increasingly profound after 50, when the margin for error shrinks dramatically. A single misstep with leveraged investments or a toxic business partnership can erase decades of careful wealth building with insufficient time to recover. This protection-based approach crystallizes into Munger's most counterintuitive insight for investors over 50. Building wealth at this stage is far less about making brilliant moves and far more about avoiding catastrophic ones. This revelation inverts the entire paradigm of modern investment thinking. which relentlessly focuses on opportunity seeking rather than disaster prevention. The hidden truth here cuts against our natural instincts. We're hardwired to pursue gains, to hunt for the next big winner, the next Tesla, the next Bitcoin. But Munger's journey revealed that after 50, this pursuit often leads directly to financial ruin. The breakthrough comes when you realize you don't need to double your money overnight. You need to avoid blowing yourself up. This shift in priority creates an entirely different decision framework. Keep investments simple and understandable. If you can't explain it to a reasonably intelligent teenager, it's probably too complex for your portfolio. Preserve capital as a first priority. Every dollar you lose after 50 costs far more than the same dollar lost at 30, simply because you have less time for recovery. Resist the ever-present demon of envy. Your neighbor's apparent success tells you nothing about the sustainability of their approach. And perhaps most importantly, play defense rather than offense. Focus on durability over spectacular returns. The revelation that often surprises even sophisticated investors is how this seemingly conservative approach doesn't actually sacrifice returns over the long run. By avoiding the big mistakes, by staying in the game rather than being knocked out, you actually position yourself to capture the full benefit of long-term compounding, something that becomes impossible if you suffer a catastrophic loss along the way. If these preventative measures, avoiding debt, drama, and harmful associations, have protected your wealth more effectively than chasing returns, drop a protection mindset in the comments if you've experienced the power of Munger's subtraction-based approach. This protection-based philosophy leads naturally to another critical revelation about the mathematical reality that governs all financial outcomes. It's a truth so fundamental that most people overlook it entirely. The revelation that often surprises even sophisticated investors is how powerful steady compounding becomes over 15+ years. A reliable 7% return, consistently achieved and reinvested, doubles your money approximately every decade. This means that with just 15 years of patience, your capital can grow by 2.8 times without taking extraordinary risks. By focusing on the marathon rather than the sprint, you allow the miracle of compounding to do the heavy lifting. This mathematical reality reveals something profound about wealth building after 50. The frantic pursuit of spectacular returns often leads to precisely the kind of catastrophic mistakes that destroy capital. Meanwhile, the patient investor who achieves reasonable, consistent returns ends up substantially wealthier simply by avoiding those errors and letting time work its magic. The transformation happens when you shift your focus from the daily noise of market movements to the powerful long-term trend of compound growth. This perspective shift creates a remarkable sense of calm. The daily financial headlines become less urgent, the market's short-term gyrations less concerning. You develop the emotional resilience to stay the course when others panic, because you understand the underlying mathematical reality. I've witnessed this inner revolution in countless investors who finally grasped the genuine power of compounding. They stop chasing the latest hot stock tip or investment fad. They abandon the exhausting pursuit of timing market tops and bottoms. Instead, they construct robust portfolios of quality assets, and then, this is the crucial part, they simply let them work. Now I want to address what might be Munger's most fundamental insight. One so simple it's often overlooked, yet so powerful it underpins everything else. The mathematical reality that governs all financial outcomes is brutally straightforward. If you don't spend less than you earn, no investment strategy on earth can save you. This truth transcends sophistication, education, and income level. People with seven-figure salaries routinely end up broke in retirement because they consistently live beyond their means. Meanwhile, modest earners with disciplined spending habits often retire in comfort because they understood and respected this fundamental arithmetic. Munger's observation here illuminates a profound disconnect in financial education. We obsess over investment returns, asset allocation, and market timing, while often ignoring the behavioral foundation that makes wealth accumulation possible in the first place. The journey to financial independence begins not with clever stock picking, but with the radical act of living below your means, consistently and without exception. The transformation happens when you realize that every dollar not spent becomes a soldier in your financial army, working tirelessly to produce more dollars through investment returns. This compounding effect creates a virtuous cycle that accelerates over time, but it cannot begin without the discipline to resist unnecessary consumption. The math is unforgiving. Someone who earns $250,000 but spends $260,000 is getting poorer, regardless of their sophisticated investment strategy. Someone who earns $60,000 but consistently invests $12,000 will inevitably build wealth over time. This revelation often comes as an uncomfortable awakening, especially for high-income professionals who've grown accustomed to lifestyle. Inflation. The realization that impressive salaries don't automatically translate to financial security can be jarring. Yet this moment of truth often catalyzes the most important financial transformation of all, the shift from consumption-focused to savings-focused living. If you've experienced this fundamental shift in perspective, recognizing that financial freedom starts with spending discipline rather than investment brilliance, drop arithmetic works in the comments. This simple acknowledgement might be the most important financial insight you'll ever embrace. Now let's explore how this fundamental arithmetic combines with one final principle to create a comprehensive framework for financial security after 50. The ability to live below your means isn't just about basic financial discipline. It represents a profound philosophical stance toward life itself. When you consistently spend less than you earn, you're making a radical declaration of independence from the consumption treadmill that traps so many people, particularly as they advance in their careers. This discipline becomes even more crucial after 50, when your peak earning years may be behind you and the runway for recovery from financial mistakes gets shorter. The transformation occurs when you realize that true wealth isn't measured by what you spend, but by the gap between what you earn and what you spend. This gap creates the foundation for everything else in your financial life. I've witnessed remarkable journeys of people who embrace this principle even late in life. One client, a physician who had spent decades living up to and slightly beyond his considerable income, had a revelation at 57. He realized that despite earning millions over his career, he had shockingly little to show for it. The awakening was painful, but ultimately liberating. He dramatically restructured his lifestyle, eliminating status purchases and unnecessary luxuries without sacrificing genuine quality of life. Within just 5 years, this new approach transformed his financial landscape completely. The psychological freedom that came with building genuine financial security proved far more satisfying than the temporary pleasures of conspicuous consumption. His revelation captures the essence of Munger's wisdom. The journey to financial independence begins not with sophisticated investment strategies, but with the courage to live differently than most people around you. This countercultural stance requires genuine independence of mind. In a world that constantly encourages more spending, more upgrading, more status-seeking, choosing a different path demands both clarity of purpose and strength of character. The revelation here transcends mere finance. It touches on the deeper question of what constitutes a well-lived life. As we reflect on Munger's legacy, it's clear that his greatest contribution isn't just the billions he accumulated alongside Warren Buffett. It's his practical philosophy distilled from nearly a century of observing human financial behavior. The wisdom he shares cuts against much of what passes for financial advice in popular media, yet it resonates because it aligns with fundamental truths about human nature and mathematical reality. The journey to financial security after 50 isn't about financial acrobatics or chasing the next big thing. It's about patience, discipline, and avoiding catastrophic mistakes. It's about embracing simplicity when others chase complexity. It's about focusing on durability rather than spectacular returns. It's about cultivating indifference to what others think or do with their money. These principles may sound simple, and intellectually, they are. But implementing them consistently in the face of market volatility, peer pressure, and our own psychological weaknesses, that's anything but easy. This distinction between simple and easy lies at the heart of Munger's philosophy. The principles that lead to financial security aren't complicated or mysterious. They don't require advanced degrees or sophisticated financial instruments. They require something far more challenging, the emotional discipline to follow common-sense guidelines, even when everyone around you is doing the opposite. This insight reveals perhaps the most profound truth of all about wealth building after 50. The greatest obstacles aren't technical, but psychological. The battle isn't fought primarily in the marketplace, but in the mirror. If you've recognized this fundamental truth in your own financial journey, type "mirror battle" in the comments to acknowledge this often overlooked dimension of wealth building. The wisdom Munger offers creates a framework for financial security that transcends market cycles and economic conditions. It's an approach that works not just in bull markets or bear markets, but across all markets and all conditions. As we wrap up our exploration of Charlie Munger's timeless wisdom, I'm struck by how counterintuitive yet profoundly simple his advice really is. The journey to financial security after 50 isn't about financial acrobatics or chasing the next big thing. It's about patience, discipline, and avoiding the catastrophic mistakes that can derail decades of effort. Munger's legacy isn't just the billions he accumulated alongside Warren Buffett. It's the practical philosophy he distilled from nearly a century of observing human behavior in the face of financial temptation. His message resonates because it addresses not just our portfolios but our psychology, the real battlefield where financial independence is won or lost. If you found value in these insights, I'd love to continue our conversation in the comments. Type Munger's mirror if you recognized yourself or your own financial journey somewhere in this discussion. Your experience might help someone else who's navigating these same waters. And if you appreciated this deeper dive into investment wisdom that goes beyond the typical financial advice, consider subscribing to join our community of thoughtful investors. We're building something special here, a space where we can explore these transformative ideas together, away from the noise and hype of mainstream financial media. I've prepared another video that explores how to actually implement some of these principles in today's market environment. It's a perfect companion to what we've discussed today. Click right here and let's continue the conversation. After all, as Munger himself might say, the journey to financial wisdom isn't a sprint. It's a lifelong marathon best run with good company.